PSG and Arsenal have something they share in common. Obviously, when you look at the style of play and the way they play, the way they execute their jobs and duties on the pitch, they have something they share in common. But don't forget to follow, to subscribe, share, and like, comment, everything. This is Kabaka Babadi, always. Now, when you look at the PSG's system, or let's first start by the lineup. In the goal, they usually use Matvey Safonov. He is always in their goal. Their number 2 or right full back is Warren Zaire Emre, because this Morocco guy is injured. Yeah, he has an injury. I know that one. He has an injury and he won't be able to feature in the finals of the Champions League. Yeah, I mean Ashraf Hakimi has an injury. And now when you go to number, their left full back is Mendes, Pacho Manquinos in the centre back, Joao Neves, Vitinha, Fabian Ruiz in the midfield alignment, Kvaratskhelia, Dembele and Desire Doe on the front side. That's why they play 4-3-3. When you look at Arsenal, I will refer to the last game each played in the Champions League. Arsenal has Raya in the goal, has Ben White as number 2 or right full back. He has Ricardo Calfiori as number 3 or the left full back. Then Saliba Maglares in the centre back, Declan Rice and Martin Lewis Skelly in the double pivot. Then Saka is a Trossard on the other 3 edge, and then Gyökeres in the front. So PSG, these two teams have something they share in common, of which they all need fluidity in the midfield. They all rotate via their midfield. But what is different from PSG or Paris Saint-Germain is that for them, at least, they normally use their wings. They run a lot. When you look at the ages of Kvaratskhelia, Dembele and Desire Doe, you'll get to know that these guys, they don't have a typical striker, but they just invert from the position, and yet they score a lot of goals in this system. So I'll talk about the midfield for today. PSG's statistics in the midfield, its characteristics in the midfield are as follows. First and foremost, they use what we call the fluid possession based on a 4-3-3 midfield, on a 4-3-3 rather formation. They have an anchor, or call him a deep lying playmaker, who operates as if he's the base of the midfield. And this is where the heart of the midfield for PSG is. And guess who plays there? This is Vitinha who plays there. He is the press resistant and dictates the tempo of the game, recycling possession and starting attacks from deep. This is what the anchor plays, or the deep lying midfielder, Vitinha. That's what he plays. 2, we have the float box-to-box players. These are 2 players. That is Fabian Ruiz and Joao Neves. These players, actually, when you look at their role, is totally different from that of Vitinha, because when they are playing in the game, they act as versatile central advanced midfielders who are always busy at all times of the day of the game. They possess high football IQ, making late runs into the box or dropping wide to overload the wings. They overload the wings. They eventually, in every interval, they play the game to the wings. That is why Bakola or Vitinha, Desire Doe, these guys are always busy, because of the fluidity in the midfield, controlled by Joao Neves and Fabian Ruiz. These are the key tactics of this midfield. There's what we call position fluidity. Here, midfielders frequently interchange positions to drag defenders out of the shape. They interchange positions, hence challenging the communication between the opposing defense. So this is where the problem is. This is where PSG is very deadly, because by interchanging frequently in these midfielders, it cuts off the communication of these 2 or 3, 4 centre backs of the opposing side. Here, they create spaces for wingers and overlapping, allowing the fullbacks to overlap. So by so doing, they are overpressing the defender, hence a result into a goal. There is what we call adaptive shapes. Here, these midfielders depends on the opponent formation. The way the opponent comes is the way they adapt. That's why it's called the adaptive shape. You just adapt it from there according to the behavior, according to the structure, according to the style of play of the opponent. Here, they shift into a 4-2-2-2 on a midfield diamond. This is how they play their midfield. Remember, they come in a 4-3-3 alignment, but in the adaptive shapes, they switch to 4-2-2-2. This is also a formation in the midfield inside the game as they are playing. They come as a 4-3-3 style, but they switch and they change to a 4-2-2-2. Thirdly, there is what we call high pressing. Here, the midfield group is built in high mobility and work ethic frequently, operating in aggressive high block. That's why some people say PSG at times can play a low block. Yes, they do, because they do it systematically in their system. This is why Luis Enrique's game is very technical and very different from others. Here, the mobility and work ethic, the mobility and the ethic is operated frequently, operating in aggressive high block structure to win the ball back in the attacking third. This is what they play. They have to make sure they win the ball back in the attacking third. So that's how systematically PSG operates. So now when we go to Arsenal, Arsenal also plays a fluid box midfield, transforming to a high structured 4-3-3 possession or a 4-2-3-1 without the ball. When they don't have the ball, they play 4-2-3-1. That is what we call a recycle or a realignment after losing the ball. This is why Arsenal looks very organized when it doesn't have the ball, because they play a systematized game or criteria. They have a criteria they use on the pitch, which is a systematically based on what they train. It is intentional. This is why their team takes a lot of time. This is why their team does not concede so much, because it is operated systematically. Now the system relies on dynamic hybrid players who can adapt their roles based on their opponent, combining physical dominance, tactical discipline, and technical press resistance. This is why people always say, why does Arsenal not concede a lot of goals? They work for it. It's not by chance, it's not by luck, but they fight for it, because the opponents combine physical dominance as a team, tactical discipline. There must be that discipline at the pitch, at the football pitch, wherever they are playing the game. That discipline, that mentality, they have to observe it at all times when they are at the pitch, and technical press resistance. This is why they resist the press. I tell you, you are going to enjoy this final, because these two teams seem to be the same, seem to play the same style, seem to work in the same manner, but they are totally different. This is what we call, these are the key midfield characteristics of Arsenal's midfield. There's what we call the box in possession. When attacking, the team shifts to a 3-2-5. I told you, Arsenal, when it's coming to a football match, it operates in a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1. The moment they get the ball, the moment they are pressing the opponent, they switch to a 3-2-5 formation, creating a protective box of 4 in the final third of the opponent. Now, when they create this box of 4 in the center or in the final third of the opponent, this generally features a double pivot or a defensive midfield. Is what we call a double pivot. This features a double pivot, screening the defense by the two advanced attacking midfielders just below the line. This is where Arsenal is very terrible at, and this is where it destroys all the opponents. 2, this is what we call position fluidity. Fullbacks frequently invert to allow defensive midfielders like Declan Rice, Zubimendi or Martin Skelly to rotate or push further upfield or drop back to recycle possession. In recycling possession, there must be that proper alignment after losing the ball, whereby you have to recycle your possession, you have to realign. The team has to go in a proper realignment after losing the ball. Here you recycle possession further upfield or drop back to recycle. This is how dangerous Arsenal is after losing the ball rather. Finally, there's what we call defensive solidarity. Out of possession, all 11 players, I insist, when Arsenal is playing, all 11 players defend as a single press. By fluidity shifting, they shift roles, they shift in that fluidity manner. They run back, they run across all edges, cover up spaces, deploying a low block, not to allow the opponent to encounter them. Here, they make a compact block and drop defensive lines. They drop back into defensive lines. This is where you always see the game and you don't see Arsenal conceding a goal. So we are going to get an entertaining final. It's going to be entertaining. But what I know, all I know, the first team to score in between PSG and Arsenal, the first to score will win the game. So follow me, subscribe, and comment, share. This is Kabaka Babadi always.